My name's Joe Myers, and I'm with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is April 27th, 2012, and I'm in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, meeting at the home of Gene Slocum. I'll be interviewing Gene today as part of the Spotlighting Oklahoma Oral History series of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Thank you for meeting with me today, Gene. Would you tell me a little bit about your family and what your childhood was like growing up here in Oklahoma?
I was very fortunate, Joe. I had good Christian parents, and they were both uneducated, but they were the type people I could have patterned my life after them and done just fine. My parents had three boys, three sons. My dad came from a very abusive background. He never dealt with it, and we never had a father-son relationship. But when my dad passed, the pastor asked me, he said, "Was there anything special about your father?" And I said, "Well, I never had a good relationship with him as far as a father-son relationship." But I said, one thing I knew is my dad loved me, and he was a great man. And my mom was the same way, and she was very strict. In fact, when I was in about 60, she asked me to forgive her for the way she whipped me and everything. And I said, "No." I said, "I'm the man I am today because of you and Dad, the way you raised me in a strict, disciplined background." So, great parents.
All right. So you had two brothers as well?
I have two brothers.
What are their names?
I have my older brother's name is Don,
Mm-hmm.
and my younger brother's name was Ralph. And he died when he was about 49 from, they did biopsy and the doctor said there were so many things wrong with him they couldn't pinpoint anything. But that was a real loss to me, Joe, because he was my best friend.
I'm sure. So you grew up here around the Tulsa area here?
I was born in Bartlesville, 1931.
I see.
And we lived there until 1947, 48. And then my parents moved to Tulsa, so we came down here with them.
Okay. I'm actually very familiar with the Bartlesville area. That's where I grew up. So.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. So you were in Bartlesville. Did your father work for Philip Petroleum up there? Or?
No, he worked for the newspaper.
Oh, for the
Examiner.
The Examiner Enterprise.
Enterprise, right?
Gotcha.
So you know about it.
I do.
Yeah, he was a foreman there.
Oh.
And one reason he left is after the Second War, they were taking advantage of veterans, using them until with the GI Bill, what they did is work the salary. They start them at a low salary, and eventually, when it gets to the top pay, then they'd get rid of it and get two more veterans and start all over. And my dad couldn't work like that.
No.
So he came down to Tulsa and worked for the Tulsa World till he retired.
Okay.
At 67. He was a very shy, quiet, introverted man, and they always wanted to be the foreman. He wouldn't do it because he valued his friends more than the position.
Sure.
Because a lot of times, if you're the head man, people resent you.
That's very true. So you went to elementary school up in Bartlesville?
I went through the 7th grade.
Do you remember what school that was up there?
Jefferson Grade School.
Jefferson. Okay.
We lived at 4th and Shawnee, right by the old courthouse. And right down 4th Street was a little grade school called Jefferson. Jefferson Grade School. And I can remember to this day that every morning we'd go out and raise the flag and do the Pledge of Allegiance and all of that. And I'm not a fighting person, but for some reason in grade school I had one friend. Every time we saw each other, we fought. His name was Glenny Denny. And I always said, with a name like that, you got to be a fighter.
Yeah.
And back then, the playground was just the old red dirt. And I can still see the principal, Mr. Muncie. He'd come out there and take both of us in his office. And that's back when they could paddle you. And he'd paddle us, and I had no problem with that. After you got your whipping, then you had to stand in the hallway underneath the old clock. And everybody knew if you were standing there in the hallway, you've been bad.
Yeah.
That's the thing that bothered me. But I enjoyed Well, no, actually, my first day of school, first grade, I go to school, and after recess, I came home. And my mom says, "What are you doing home already?" She says, "I don't like school." And it's like I formed a mental block that I didn't like school. So then my 12 years of school were rough for me because I just had that mental thing. I figured I don't need history, I don't need math, so on and so forth. Because I knew that I was going to go into the printing business like my dad. I didn't need all that stuff.
Sure.
But then, of course, I regretted the fact that I didn't really apply myself in school.
Yeah.
But then when I did graduate from Rogers, came back from the Marine Corps, I did go back for business school and a few subjects like that.
Okay. So you came to move to Tulsa when you were in the 7th grade, you and your family?
Let's see, it wasn't the 7th, it was a little after that, 10, 11. The last 2 years I did here in Tulsa.
Okay. Okay. So you were in junior high and in Bartlesville still? Was that at Central?
Central, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know Bartlesville, don't you?
I do. I went to Central myself, so.
Yeah, when I was just a little fella, Frank Phillips was Uncle Frank to all the kids, and we couldn't wait till Christmas because they were during the Depression. And every Christmas he'd throw a big Christmas party for all the kids. Give you this sack full of candy and an apple and a ribbon candy, such as that, with a dollar bill.
I see.
Now back in the 30s, that was a lot of money.
Wow.
So.
Comparably, what do you think the comparable amount would be today? Someone giving you $1 in the 30s to today.
I tell my grandkids, when I was growing up as a little boy, you could buy a hamburger for 5 cents, but nobody had 5 cents. So, yeah, a dollar bill is
it's like $100.
Well, even with Frank Phillips, see, he was a millionaire. And we thought that was something else. But now, today, millionaires are a dime a dozen.
Right, right.
So,
well, and his home is right down the street from Central.
I've been through it several times.
Yeah, I have too.
In fact, he used to brag about it. He was the only millionaire that had a millionaire for a chauffeur. And this little Chinese guy that lived in the house there. We went through his room and everything. But, of course, Frank Phillips, he knew all the people and how to invest money and everything, so his little chauffeur did the same thing, became a millionaire.
I'll bet.
Driving a millionaire around.
So you went from Central, did you attend what would have been College High back then, right?
Let's see, I came from Central to Tulsa.
To Tulsa, okay.
And went to Rogers.
Okay.
Now, in Bartlesville, there wasn't that much to do when I was a little boy, and even starting into high school, wasn't that much to do. But when I came here, I got involved in the sports. And, well, in Bartlesville, in 7th or 8th grade, I went out for football. I weighed 115 pounds, played on the line, and liked to kill me. And my mom kept trying to make me quit. I said, "No, I'm going to finish this season, but I'll never do it again."
Right.
Came here, and I got involved in track and swimming. Love to swim. Learned how to swim in the Caney River.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and just back then, you're talking in the 30s, your disposal of sewage and everything, they just dumped it back in the river. And we used to go down to a little island, we call it Skunk Island. And you had to swim like this because of all the sewage coming back into the river.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, we had a great childhood.
Yeah.
But then I came to Tulsa, like I said, I got involved in sports. And I got involved in pole vaulting.
Oh.
And back then, pole vaulting, you didn't have this fiber pole. It was a bamboo pole stick.
Yeah.
And we were up around 11, 12 feet, which was pretty high then. And you didn't land on a bunch of sponge rubber. You landed in the red dirt.
Oh, wow.
So, but my coach told me, he said, if I could have had you earlier, you could have done real good. Then I got involved in swimming. As far as speed, I was a short legs. I had no speed as far as swimming, but I got involved in diving.
I see.
And I really enjoyed it. Taught swimming for a while. Just really enjoyed it. So my last year of school, I enjoyed it, but intellectually I just didn't have it.
Yeah.
And in fact, my senior year, my history teacher told me, said, I'm going to give you a passing grade simply because you tried.
Hmm.
And I said, well, thank you, lady.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awfully nice of her.
Mm-hmm.
It's awfully nice of her to do that.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
So you you graduated from Rogers High School at 18.
18. Mm-hmm.
What kind of work did you do before you entered the service?
Actually, I mowed yards, just did a few things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when I graduated from high school, I went to work at Sales Jewelry. My older brother Don was working there,
Uh-huh.
and so he got me a job, and I was engraving jewelry.
Oh, okay.
And then the Korean War broke out,
Mm-hmm.
and a bunch of us kids that just graduated from high school, we thought, well, we'll join the Marine Corps Reserve and wear that uniform and get all the girls.
Yeah.
But it didn't work because there was no girls at Camp Pendleton. But here I am working for sales, and when they called in our unit, I was fixing to leave on my last day, and the boss came to me and said, I've got one more job for you. And he handed me an identification bracelet.
Hmm.
And he said, put your name on it.
I see.
So I carried that all through Korea and
Hmm.
had it for a long time.
Wow. So what year did you graduate from Rogers, I should ask?
1950.
1950.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you were done in May of 1950,
Mm-hmm.
and then went to work for Zales. And then you just immediately joined the Marine Reserves as
Right
well.
into
And
the
then the war kicked off in
it was
June.
June, I think
June
it started
25th?
in June.
Yep.
And I had only been in the reserve for 3 months.
Oh man.
So they put us on a troop train, take us out to Camp Pendleton.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd wake up in the morning on that troop train, and the guy would come around, he'd order off the menu, and we'd pull into a big city, and boy, they'd march us into the nicest hotels, and feed us a big meal and everything. Oh, man, this Corps is going to be all right. Then we got to Camp Pendleton.
Things changed.
It was different, yeah. And here, when we met at the armory for a meeting, when they called off your name, my full name is Otis Eugene, and they'd call off my name, Slocum, and we always answered, yo, Camp Pendleton. We get there till 11 o'clock at night, and I'm not there. I go to bed at 9 o'clock, but I get up at 5. So we're standing out in front of this old barracks in pitch black, and they called off my name, and I said, yo. And that officer came by, the DI came and got right face to face with me, and he said, what did you say? I said, yo. What did you say? I said, here, sir. He said, from now on, it's here, sir. So, like I tell people, I didn't have any problem in the Corps as far as obeying orders, because my mother was like a DI. When she said it once, she didn't say it twice.
Right.
You just did what you were told.
Right.
So, I guess it was about 11 o'clock at night, our DI stomped out of the room, and several of us, we were tired. We were going to go to bed.
Sure.
So we go to bed, turn off the lights. DI come back in, flips the lights back on. He says, what have I got, a bunch of sleeping beauties? And that's when we learned to go to bed by the numbers. You stand at the foot of your bed at attention, then he hollers 1, then you go to the side of your bed, and then 2 and 3 and so on. Then you lay down, and are you asleep? And you say, no, sir. And it's all right, you do it again. And this time, you don't answer him. Okay, you're ignoring me, you're not obeying orders. So either way, you're wrong.
Right.
So I'm beginning to think, man, this Corps is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And we finally did go to bed about 3 o'clock in the morning. I remember I hear these guys outside singing, what was this song? It was Good Night, Irene. That was a very popular song. 3 o'clock in the morning? What are they doing out there singing at 3 o'clock in the morning? Well, I found out a few nights later. I was out there singing.
Yeah.
Good night. But I learned real quick, just do what you're told.
Yes. Yes. So you didn't, was that a formal boot camp for you when you went to Pendleton, or?
Exactly, man. It was very, very strict boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
They have eased up a lot, but it was pretty rough back then.
Right. What was probably the roughest part of the boot camp for you?
Oh, I'd say most of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was in good shape physically, and I was used to the discipline and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But as short as I was,
Mm-hmm.
they always put the short guys at the back of the platoon. And we're trying to stay up at the tall guys up front.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, man, it would just push you all it's worth.
When you're marching or when you're jogging, that sort of thing?
Marching, jogging, any of it.
Yep.
It was rough.
Yep.
But I came from a very disciplined background, which helped me
Mm-hmm.
through boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
And there was over 300 of us in the unit, the reserve unit here.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get to Camp Pendleton, we were out there 3 months before we really did much of anything. And then they finally called us out one day and they said, everyone from the corporal on up, get this group over here. And you private guys get over here. So those of us that had just been in for a few months, we said, what happens to us? And they said, well, you go to boot camp for 12 weeks. And we said, how about the other guys? And I'll never forget, the officer said, God only knows.
Mm.
And a lot of those Marines, they learn to load and shoot their rifle at a barrel behind the ship, troop ship, as they're going across.
Mm.
And so many of those guys came back in body bags because they had no training.
My goodness. My goodness. So you're, when did you finish up boot camp? Do you remember?
It was 12 weeks later.
Okay.
And then
So that would have been, okay,
let's see,
October?
October. Well, let's see, it seems like we're talking 60-some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Seemed like after we finished boot camp,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the equipment and everything had been greased and stored away
Mm-hmm.
from the Second War.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like they kept us there several weeks cleaning up barracks and
Mm-hmm.
they had a grease or something that they coated everything with. We had to
Yeah.
clean all that stuff off and everything.
Like Cosmoline?
Cosmoline, yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we spent some time cleaning up. And I don't remember the exact month or date that I went to Korea, but I remember on this troop ship, there's 5,000 Marines. They took 6 of us and put us on the ship several days prior to the rest of them coming on, so we could learn the areas of the ship and help direct the other guys.
Mm.
And then we were, I think, something like 21 days going over on that ship.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't mind that. I had
Yeah.
a good time.
So you're, 3 weeks later, you're heading into, did you end up in Kobe, Japan, initially?
We went to, I think our first stop was Yokosuka, Japan, the naval base there. Then we went up to Kobe.
I see.
And we get to Yokosuka there and they give us base liberty.
Oh.
We're going to go to Korea in a couple of days and get ourselves shot at.
Yeah.
Base liberty? Well,
Yeah.
here I was a nice guy. I stayed on base. But a lot of the guys, man, they just tore the fence down and went in town. Because, well, you got to lose.
Yeah.
Then we went up to Kobe the
Mhm.
next day. And I told my buddies, I said, man, I can't wait to go to a Japanese restaurant, have a Japanese meal,
Mm-hmm.
and really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to Kobe, go ashore, go to the restaurant there, and they were serving hamburgers and singing a country western song. So I never did have my Japanese meal.
Oh, no. No. Wow. So, how long were you at Kobe? Was that
Just
that was
overnight.
Just overnight, and then from there, did you move out to Incheon? From that,
You have to understand, Joe, combat messed me up so much.
Mhm.
When I left the Naval Hospital in Corpus Christi, I put all that behind me.
Mhm.
I don't remember battles, I don't remember towns, villages, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I just put it behind me.
I see.
Now, a lot of the guys, they can tell you every hill, every battle, every town,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't want to deal with it.
Sure, I understand that. So you head out from Kobe, and I know from the historical record that the initial push was the left hook into Incheon, and then from there, U.S. troops along with UN forces were moving towards Seoul. Now you were part of that push.
I remember I got there 2 months after the Chosin Reservoir,
Mm-hmm.
so you might be able to date it that way.
Okay. So you actually would have come in probably and then gone the other direction. Up to the north from there.
I was there 8 months,
Mm-hmm.
and up and down the East Coast,
Okay.
up past the 38th parallel,
Okay. So from the Pusan perimeter, basically up and down. Okay.
back and forth.
My goodness.
So,
My goodness. How did you guys? Well, let me ask you this first. Do you remember who the men that you served with?
mhm.
What were their names?
Well, we paired up.
Uh-huh.
What they do in the Marine Corps, maybe the same thing with other services, they don't want you to have a close relationship, and they keep dividing you. Now, the group that we left from Tulsa with, I was with very few of those men when we got to Korea. And I was with one in particular. His name was Dean Roberts. And he and I, we pitched our little pup tents together, and we became like brothers. And another one his name was Tommy Roberts. Now again, that's been so many years ago, I've pretty well forgotten most of them by name. And another one, Bob Martin, his dad was chief police of Austin, Texas. And Bob and I, we ended up carrying ammunition for a light 30. And as small as I am, carrying all my gear, plus 2 boxes of ammo, at I think they weighed something like 21 pounds apiece. And I'll have to admit, I had a real attitude in Korea. I didn't want to be there. I don't like killing people and being mean and such as that.
Sure.
And if we're going up the road and we're not having any resistance, what Bob and I would do, we'd just lay down and take a nap. Because there's nothing happening. And by the time we caught up with them, we had all the bad duty. First thing we had to do is dig the slit trench where you go to the bathroom. And we're just a couple of hungry guys. We did get so wide the guys could hardly straddle, just out of meanness. And KP duty got used to it.
Yeah.
But no, I've forgotten a lot of those names.
Okay. So it's Dean Roberts, Tommy Roberts, and Bob Martin. When you first joined the Marines, what was your military job, your MOS that they had assigned you?
Infantry.
Infantry.
We had no choice.
Yeah, that's where everybody was going to essentially.
You're going to Korea.
Yeah.
There's no choice.
What kind of weapon did you carry over there?
M1.
M1. Okay.
Weighed 17 pounds.
Yeah.
And I did real good in boot camp on the rifle range. And I gave my medals to my son. And he bought those. He made that case for me.
I'll be.
And you know what that wood is?
What is
called
it?
Purple Heart.
Oh, no kidding.
That's Purple Heart wood.
Huh.
It's an exotic wood. But he put all my medals in there. Now the one I got for marksman, I gave it to him because it was sterling silver. And he had it appraised, and it was $1,500.
No kidding.
So I just gave it. I gave him all my original medals, and he bought new ones for me.
I'll be.
But on the rifle range, oh man, that M1 had such a kick to it. You'd come home after the rifle range, your shoulder would just be black and blue from that thing kicking.
Mm-hmm.
I had the steel plate on it, man, it would got so sore. And I would zero in on that, and I'd close my eyes, bam.
Mm-hmm.
But I did real good.
Mm-hmm. Those were just paper targets back then. Did you have pop-up targets at any point in time?
No, it was it's stationary, and you'd fire your shot, you'd fire your round, and then they'd lift up a little black circle to show where you hit the target.
I see.
And then you could adjust according to that.
Okay. Okay.
But, one thing I remember about boot camp is one of the gases they used on us, I can't think of it now, tear gas.
Mm-hmm.
Put you in this little building, and you've got your mask on and everything, and then they let the tear gas loose, and then the DI says, take off your mask. Your eyes start burning and watering, and your throat gets sore. Now sing the Marine Corps hymn. That'll give you an attitude, believe me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you remember the names of any of your DIs out there?
No, I don't.
You don't? Any of them come to mind just for their actions or who the way they comported themselves?
Well, the first one, we had two. The first one was just as mean as he could be. He was a good DI. You never saw him smile. He hollered at you all the time, right in your face. But the other one he was just a very mellow guy. And I remember when we'd go out on the parade ground there in Camp Pendleton, for the first time they call you a Marine. They call you everything but a Marine. But then they call you a Marine. Boy, your chest swells up and you feel so proud. Then you go back to the barracks. And the mean DI, he didn't come in. But the other one, the real mellow, he sits and visits like we're good friends.
Yeah.
And we asked him, said, what are you going to do now? I'll never forget, he said, I get another group of warm bodies. And see, in boot camp, what you got to realize is we're kids coming from every different background that you can imagine.
Yeah.
They completely destroy you and make you a unit.
Yes.
And there's one thing about that, I think one thing that really led me into the Marine Corps is the pride. I mean, you come out, you're just so proud of being a Marine.
Yeah.
So.
Something to hang your hat on.
Right, and then of course during the Second War, we were 7, 8 years old, me and my brothers, and we'd go down on the Caney River and play war.
Uh-huh.
And of course I watched all the John Wayne movies, man, he was our hero, and I thought, man, if I ever go in the military, I'm going to be a Marine.
Yeah.
So I go in, my two brothers, my older brother, he went into the Seabees, and he worked in the laundry and cut hair. And I'm going there getting myself shot at. Now my younger brother, Ralph, he joined the Navy, man. He wanted to see the world.
Yeah.
He was never on a ship. He ended up in Pensacola, Florida, folding parachutes.
Oh no.
So I call him Mom's little mothball fleet. He didn't see the humor to it, but
he's down there in that white sand area down there at Pensacola.
Right.
Yep.
no, so
Wow. So how did you guys entertain yourselves? Both here in the States and even once you got over to Korea.
in the States, after boot camp, all the guys, there's 3 things they want to do. Go into San Diego, Oceanside, buy some ribbons, because you could buy them at the store, and get a tattoo, and find a woman to sleep with. Well, I came from the Christian background. I didn't want a tattoo.
Sure.
I didn't drink. I didn't want to sleep around.
Right.
So I had 2 buddies. I can't think of one of them was about Martin. Go with them every weekend into San Diego and just different places, in and out all the bars. And I'd get me a 7-Up, put a little Coke or something, and it looked like I was drinking. And when they got so drunk they couldn't take care of themselves, I'd take them back to the barracks. And they'd get up the next morning, oh, Gene, don't ever drink. It's not worth. Of course, next weekend they're doing it again. But I went with them back and forth, and that's kind of how I entertained myself. Then on base, of course, in boot camp, they've got every minute of your day tied up.
Sure.
And then after you graduate, we weren't there but just a very short time until we shipped out. But I remember just going down, just walking around the base. So proud to be a Marine.
Okay. Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual event while you were in the service?
Well, when I went in the service, I didn't have anyone writing to me. I hadn't had that much interest in girls until right before I went into the Marine Corps. And then here I am in Camp Pendleton, and I told him, I said, man, I'm going to go home, leave, and give me some names of girls that I'm going to write to. And when I came back from boot camp, I had a list of 18 girls I was writing to.
My goodness.
In Korea, you see, I didn't think I was a good-looking kid. My mother, bless her heart, she beat me down, and I just had no self-esteem at all.
Sure.
I mean, as far as she was concerned, I don't care how good I did, I didn't do good enough. You should have done this if you'd have just listened to me. And like I said, when the little boy, she didn't use a belt, or she'd make us go out and get a switch off the tree. And she would switch me with that. And the reason she apologized to me when I was in my 60s, is she said, when I whipped you, you wouldn't cry. Then I got mad and I'd beat you. And that's what really bothered her. But I don't know why I shared that. But I go overseas, and of course you're in a combat zone. I was kind of a reserve unit that I was with. So I didn't go through what the chosen few did. If I had gone through that, Joe, I think I'd have lost my mind. Because as a Christian, I have a compassion to help people.
Sure.
And to go over there and kill them, it just really tore me up. And I think what bothered me more than anything over there, you're a crazy person. You're a hired killer. And you see and you do things that today it just makes you sick to think of what you did. And I was writing to one girl. I told her, I said, what do you want me to bring you back from Korea? And she didn't say anything. I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to bring you the teeth out of a North Korean. Of course, the Chinese weren't into you. We over there in this hill had been hit by napalm sometime before we got there. And I find this skull, and it's still greasy. And both shoes are there with the feet in it. And I've got a picture of it. I pulled those teeth out of that skull. I look at it now, that was someone's son.
Yeah.
It could have been someone's dad.
Yeah.
But I thought nothing of it then. And these things come back to you. We didn't take very many prisoners. I remember one we took, and he'd been hit in the throat. And these Marines were giving him a drink of water, and it ran back out his throat. And they were laughing at it. To me, it wasn't funny. You stand there and watch him die. And those things, they don't go away. When I was in Korea, there's a number of times that I should have been dead. I remember one time we're just taking this hill, it was real rocky soil and everything. And I dug my foxhole, just deep enough for me to lay in, because it was so rocky. And dug my foxhole out and everything. Then we get into a firefight, and I was literally chased up a foxhole with a machine gun. The bullets were just hitting all around me. And I remember diving into my foxhole, and I thought, man, when this is over with, I mean, you'd be surprised how deep I got that foxhole, because I came so close to dying. I remember being on a tank, and we just crossed this creek, and several of us rode the tank across because we didn't want to get wet again. We just got to the other side, and it hit a tank mine, and we thought it was mortars coming in. I remember jumping off the back of that tank and seeing the driver. He just screamed like crazy. He looked like a black man. He was burned so bad. Of course, we didn't have black Marines with us. The segregation thing was bad. But you see those things, they're just there. But I think one of the things that bothered me more than anything is the children. We usually got sea rations most every day, and we got these little children coming up to you, and they'd want the chocolate bar and the cigarettes, and I'd give them the chocolate bar and the cigarettes, and some of the baked beans or whatever, because I knew that I'd get another meal the next day or so. And I remember one little girl, she was probably 9 or 10 years old, had been hit in the leg and everything, and it was all festered, infected and everything. And to this day, I wonder what happened to those little children. But those are things you just can't forget.
Yeah.
And I remember a time we were carrying ammunition, we were going up this side of this hill, no resistance or anything. We stopped real quick. And the machine gunner that I was carrying ammo for, we were laying there and having their cigarettes. And he was saying, you know, he said, I was in the Second War. And now here I am in Korea. He said, when I get out of here, I'm getting out of the Corps. We picked up our gear and we had gone 50 yards up the hill till the machine gun opened up on us. And they got him. Just a young man, young kids. But those things stick with you and you can't.
Yeah.
I still have nightmares. So let's go.
Yep. Yep. It's can you tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences? Good memorable experiences. We'll step away from the
Good or bad?
good or either or. Either or.
Are they more?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember, like I tell you, I had an attitude in Korea, and for some reason the sergeant took a real disliking to me. And he carried 2 canteens. Every time we had inspection, those canteens better be full of water. And ours were not the plastic, they were the old aluminum. And they had that seam around it. And one of my canteens had a leak, and I could only carry it half full of water. And I kept telling the sergeant, I said, I need a new canteen. And for some reason, my attitude, he wouldn't give me a new one. So we're going through an inspection one time, and the officer shakes my canteens. He said, how come that one's only half full? And I said, sir, it's got a leak in it, and the sergeant won't give me a new one. Well, that didn't help my relationship with the sergeant. Sure. But I've never forgotten that. Some little silly thing like that. But now, what was your question?
Some of the most memorable things from some of your most memorable experiences over there.
Well, back to when I kind of mentioned it when at boot camp when you're graduating, when they call you a Marine.
Yeah.
That was one of my highlights.
Yeah.
But in Korea, I've always been kind of a happy-lucky, joking person, and I don't care what the situation was, I could laugh about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into a firefight and get hit pretty hard, and after it was over with, I could laugh about it, and I always tried to salvage whatever we were going through. And, I still see the little children. I just had such a love for them. One of my buddies, this Bob Martin, they get their ration of beer, and he's saving up his cans of beer for a USO show.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really going to tie one on at that show. And we're sitting there on a log watching the show, and our reconnaissance plane comes swinging around and brings a little Piper Cub in.
Mm-hmm.
The Marines are really scavengers. A lot of our vehicles, it said U.S. Army, because when they get hit, they'd run off and leave their equipment.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go back and get it.
Mm-hmm.
And our reconnaissance plane said Army on the side of it. And he was coming in, he comes swooping along the mountains, comes in to land it. We're watching the show. And he comes in to land it, and the wheels hit just a little ditch right at the end of the runway and flipped me over upside down. And it didn't bother us, Joe. We just kind of, yeah, look at that, he's upside down. We're watching the show.
Yeah.
And Bob Martin, I looked over, he's flat on his back. One kind of bear knocked him. But I've never forgotten that. But in fact, after I got out of the service, Bob and I kept contact for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Now this Dean Martin that was with me, he was right behind me when I stepped on that landmine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was his best man at the wedding. We were friends for quite some time, then we just kind of drifted apart.
Yeah.
So. But there was always the good and always the bad. A lot of times your situation is all in the way you handle it yourself. So I'd always try to make the best of it.
Try to see the humor in things.
Mm-hmm. My family was that way, and that was my dad. Like I said, he was very quiet. We'd sit down and eat, and at the dinner table, and he wouldn't say anything. Just eat his meal, get up and eat, leave, and go read his newspaper. And my mother was the one that brought a sense of humor to the family.
I see.
We could always see something funny about, I don't care what the situation was.
Yeah.
And she could always, after she found out that her boys were okay and everything, then she'd start laughing about it.
Yeah.
And she brought that sense of humor into the family, which I'm really thankful for.
Sure.
I take life very serious, but I still have a sense of humor.
I'm sure it serves you well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You remember the unit, what the unit name was, or that you were with in Korea? Just
No.
offhand.
Remember, I put all that behind me.
Okay. Okay.
And some of the guys with the chosen few, they can't believe that I don't remember any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's one man with the chosen few, you didn't meet him because he's had a stroke and he doesn't come anymore.
Uh-huh.
Jim Warner.
Mm-hmm.
He did exactly the same thing I did. When he left that camp, he forgot it, he just put it all behind him.
I see.
And you ask him, Jim, where were you in Korea? I was just there.
Yeah.
He can't tell you any battles, any hills, any of those things.
Mm.
So, like I said, I was kind of reserved unit. And there was one hill over there, I don't remember if it's Pork Chop Hill or what it was. A ship offshore was firing these big 16-inch shells. And we're sitting there because we're the next unit to go in. And you're sitting there and you could hear these 16-inch shells come over.
Mm-hmm.
And they just pulverize that little hill. And as soon as they stop firing, here comes the Chinese. Off from out there down in those caves. And they come out.
Hmm.
But
My goodness. Do you recall your first firefight that you got into?
yeah. I was so fortunate. We had a lieutenant that was in the Second War.
Mm-hmm.
He'd been in combat. We go up, we're taking this hill, we go up the side of it. We get up to the top. And the Chinese are running up the other side. And I shot this guy in the back. It's always bothered me. I went for counseling here in Tulsa. And the first counselors I met with, he and I just didn't hit it off at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kept telling me, he said, you need to get over it, just get over it. And I looked him right in the face, his name was Steve. I said, Steve, did you ever shoot another man? And he says, no. I said, you don't get over it.
No. No.
That's the only one I've talked about.
Mm.
My wife, my family, they'll know very, very little what I went through. But don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I see these Second World War vets, and they still cry.
Yeah.
They're in their 90s. Now, we had a couple of them there last Saturday that they were kind of funny because they could talk about anything.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the first firefight I remember being in. After that, I thought, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But that was just the first one.
Yeah.
And of course, they always tell you, well, you're following orders. Doesn't matter, you killed a man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and see, over there, things like that didn't bother me. Sitting down having my meal next to dead bodies laying around, you don't think about it. Like I say, you're crazy when you're over there.
Mm-hmm.
Just absolutely crazy. But when you come back, I did 8 months in the hospital because I was coming down this hill one time and I stepped on a landmine.
Mm-hmm.
And my first reaction is, God, why me? I've been good. And all the guys were telling me, boy, you got that $1 million wound. From the outside, you couldn't see that anything wrong, no blood, no nothing. But on the inside, from my knee down, everything was just shattered.
Mm-hmm.
And they took me to one of those aid stations. Did you ever watch that program, MASH?
Yes.
I couldn't watch it because they made a comedy out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't funny to me.
No.
Just a kid, 20, 21 years old. And came back to Yokosuka, Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And my leg was so swelled it was 5 weeks before they could do any surgery. And then they gave me a spinal block. And that's back when, let's see, when was that, 52? It was something new. They were just learning how to do it. And it was supposed to just deaden my left leg. Well, she stuck that needle in my back and, oops, got it in the wrong place. Pulled it out. Sounded like when you pull a nail out of a board. And then she come down my spine, did it again. And I was totally numb. I could move my eyes. That's all I could do.
Hmm.
And I forget, and they got this screen up there so I can't see what's going on. And here I'm laying there. I've been in combat for 8 months, 8 months. And the nurse is squeezing blackheads.
Hmm.
And I could hear them, the doctors talking, and then go over and look at the x-rays and everything. And they ask for screws and screwdriver, and you wonder, what in the world are they doing? Well, they put 2 screws in my ankle to hold it together.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of funny, I come home, married Hazel, my second wife, who was my best friend, and I was in Naval Hospital, where it was Martinez, California, just outside of San Francisco. And they were talking about removing that screw because you could feel the head of it. And the doctor said it'd be major surgeries because they had to break bones to get into one of them. And I said, hey, just leave it alone. Long it doesn't bother me, just leave it alone. So my dear wife likes to tell people that her husband has a loose screw. Literally.
That's awesome.
I was in the hospital for 8 months, and I think I matured more then as a young man than any other part of my life, because and I'm feeling sorry for myself. I'm laying in bed, Corpus Christi, and chaplain comes around. What's wrong with you? I said, man, my leg's busted up, can't walk. It even talked about taking my foot off. And he said, look at that guy over there, he's got a gut wound. He's not going to make it. Someone over there's lost an eye, lost an arm. And here you are feeling sorry for yourself. It's exactly what I needed to hear. Because then, again, my sense of humor came back. And I started feeling better, having a better attitude and everything. And then, but you always want liberty, just to get out of that hospital.
Sure.
And get something different than hospital food. And the doctor would come around every Friday, and like with my ankle, of course he knew what he was doing. He would turn it every way but loose. And by the time he got through, I hurt so bad, I didn't want to go on liberty. I was going to go back to bed.
Sure.
Then I hadn't been home for 16 months. And every time I go to the doctor to see if I could go home, no, not yet. And I had what they call a cast ulcer blister on my heel, and they had put skin grafts on it. And he looked at my body and said, if I cut it off your arm, you're going to have your heel. So just right over here, 3 different times, he put skin grafts on it. So finally, I go in the doctor, so I tell you what, I'll give you a 72-hour pass, but don't leave Corpus Christi County. No problem, Doc. I was still on crutches. So I go after his office, go back to my bunk, tie my crutches up underneath my bed, and hitchhiked home.
No kidding.
Oh, I was just so homesick and just wanting to get out of there. And like I say, you're crazy. Your head is just, and like my mom said, and many moms said the same thing. My son was never the same after Korea. You don't go through what we went through, the Marines and the soldiers, and come back and live a normal life. And but I hitchhiked home, knocked on the door. My parents didn't know I was coming on a Saturday morning. And of course, after they got through crying and everything, when do you have to be back? I said, Monday morning. Well, how are you going to get back? I never thought of that.
Yeah.
So what happened is what really ticked my parents off is the following weekend I had her 30-day leave. So my mom drove me back to Corpus Christi and spent a week down there. And we came back.
Oh, she spent a week down there waiting for you.
Yeah.
I see.
And again, to kind of show you how the Lord can take care of you, I'm down there in Corpus Christi, standing on the street corner in the dark, kind of feeling sorry for myself because I wanted to go home. The doctor wouldn't let me. Young man walks up to me and introduced himself, and he says, I'm a Marine. And he said, I'll take you out of my parents' house. So we go out to his parents' house. They're really Mr. and Mrs. Davis. Go out, meet his parents. She took me in the bedroom. She said, that's your bed. Open up the closet, push the clothes back. She says, that's where you hang your clothes. I want you out here every weekend. And if I wasn't there, she'd call in the hospital, want to know why.
No kidding.
And one of the best Christmases I ever had was at the Davis's Christmas dinner. I mean, they had step ladders, crates, and everything around the old kitchen table. There's old country people.
Uh-huh.
And I could just feel the love of that family. They were just so neat. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Speaking of the hospital there, when I finally began to leave the room there and go out and walk around, I wouldn't get off the sidewalk. Because if I got off the sidewalk, I would get blown up again. So for the longest time, I stayed right on the concrete. And those are just things you had to work through.
Yeah.
And just like with PTSD, I didn't talk about it for 40 years, Joe. I didn't want people to know I was a Marine.
Yeah.
Because we came back from Korea as baby killers.
Yeah.
And see, two things they teach in the Marine Corps, I mentioned earlier, don't get into a close relationship. Farther north we went in Korea, even the little kids would kill you. And they got to tell they teach you, don't trust anyone. And I came back with all these girls I was writing to. I was writing to one that became the love of my life. And to this day, I still think about her. Her name was Barbara. And I came back, she and I are going together. I am such a mess emotionally. Don't get into a close relationship and don't trust people. I didn't trust the girls I went with. I wouldn't kiss them goodnight. I wouldn't hold hands, nothing. And this Barbara, she and I just had the best relations. We were great friends. But then I go to pick her up one night and she opened the door and handed me my class ring back. Says, I don't want to go with you anymore. I was so shook up. I quit my job, moved to Okmulgee, go to the trade school down there. And years later, my niece got married and her husband was a Marine. And I told him, I said, Mike, I said, man, this girl was the love of my life. And I said, I don't understand why she dumped me like she did. He said, it's your Marine Corps training. I said, Marine Corps training? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Don't you remember? You were taught not to get into a close relationship because, which had happened several times in Korea. And then you don't trust anyone? So I said, that's exactly it. And of course, with that training and that in my subconscious, it didn't help my first marriage. And when my first wife and we had children when they were 5, 6 years old, I wouldn't allow them downstairs until I went upstairs and inspected their bedroom. And my wife said, you're trying to make Marines out of our children. I said, what's wrong with that? But I look back at it now and it bothers me. And I've asked my kids to forgive me, but they're great. They're great, so.
Yeah.
Strange things. But I to this day, I still think of that girl. So.
Did you ever hear from her after that?
No, I never did. I was so shook up that, of course, I felt it was all my fault, which was a lot of it was. Now, this Tommy Roberts that I mentioned, he was right behind me when I got wounded, and he knew this Barbara. They were good friends. And in fact, the girl he married lived right next door to her. And I saw him at the airport one time, and I said, hey, whatever happened to Barbara? He said, oh, she finally got married. But I never called her or anything like that, because I figured it was all my fault anyway.
Sure.
But many years later, I realized it was my training. And see, I have no problems following orders. I have no problems obeying people. So, anyway, I think I was talking about girls, wasn't I?
I think so. Oh,
Yeah.
The girl that you Barbara?
Barbara.
Is that her name? Okay, Barbara was her name. So you never were able to talk to her after that?
No, I was too embarrassed to go back. And because like I'm a shy person, if something used to be, I was so introverted and so insecure, if something went wrong, it was my fault. And but I never went back. I was so cruel to the girls I went with after I came back from Korea. I remember one girl, Mogi. She and I went together for a while. We were sitting in front of her house, And, oh man, I hate to even say these things.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, you know, as long as we've been going together, you've never opened the car door for me. I just kind of slipped down in my seat and I said, well, wake me up in the morning, I have an 8 o'clock class. She never went with me after that. You don't blame her, but that was my attitude. I don't know what it was. I don't know what caused that. But it was many years later that I realized I had a very, as far as a sense of humor, I could really hurt people just trying to be funny. But it wasn't funny. And I look at it now and I think, man, what a mess that was. I'm not blaming it all on Korea or anything like that.
Sure.
Because I came from a very loving family.
Yeah.
You know.
You said you stayed in touch with several of the fellows from your unit back then. Did you guys get together for reunions or anything like that, or meet at central places?
I got together one time with the reserve unit that left Tulsa. And I went to that, and with my present wife, went to it. And I saw these guys all crippled up, and I could just see, because I'd done domestic counseling, I could see the hurt and the pain in them. And I told Hazel afterwards this, I don't want to go to another reunion. Now, I did have one, his name was Jimmy Potts. I met him here in Tulsa, went to school with him. And he ended up in Oregon, Washington, up there somewhere. And he called, that's before I moved back to Tulsa. And he called my parents and said that he'd like to get in contact with me. But I never did. Never did contact him.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I'm still kind of an insecure person. I'm very successful at anything that I do, but I just feel like anyone could do better than me. It's just like in the printing business. I could do 4-color process off of a duplicating machine. Wait, I guess it's still around. It's the old multilith, and it was basically a duplicating machine. And I even had people come out from the company say, how can you produce that kind of work off this duplicating machine? You know, I told them, I just pray. I give God a lot of credit for my success and things that I've accomplished. But everything, even as Christian counselors, and dealing with all the domestic things, we were very successful, my wife and I. We've got kids that were 12, 13 years old when we started working with them. They were into drugs and all that sort of stuff. And they're in their 50s now. And they still call us and tell us that you have made life worth living for us. It makes you feel good,
Man.
to know that people still contact you.
Yeah.
You know.
Wow.
And people I work for will say that I worked in a little job shop when I first got out of the trade school. I go and apply for the job, just a little job shop downtown Tulsa. And he said, can you run a Heidelberg? Well, I knew it was a German press. I said, sure. I'd never even seen one. So I go in my first day of work and I asked the foreman, I said, how do you turn this thing on? And like I said, I was very good at what I did, even in the printing business. And the boss came to me one day, he said, you're the first pressman I've ever had that made money for me off of that press.
Wow.
And
Wow.
but even as a counselor, we were very successful because I felt God had anointed us to be able to do that type of stuff.
That's outstanding.
And but we still do it.
Yeah. Oh,
In fact, just yesterday I'm dealing with a young man, PTSD, and he refuses to talk about Iraq and the things that he went through and the killings. I sat here for 4 hours yesterday and listened to him talk. Never mentioned PTSD. Talked about all the other things that just didn't relate to what we need to talk about at all. But I'm very patient. I can listen to him talk because someday he's going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And we'll help him.
That's absolutely true. When you were in Korea, or even just in the Marines, was there something special that you did, or something special that you carried with you for good luck?
Well, I guess that ID bracelet that I mentioned when I worked at sales,
Mm-hmm.
and every time I look at it, I think, man, those people thought enough of me to give me that bracelet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I really valued it. I don't know. Of course, we carried the little pack like that
Sure.
in Korea. You had a change of clothes, you shave your gear, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I had an opium pipe
Mm-hmm.
and a Korean flag,
Mm.
and they meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
But when I was wounded, and I'm laying on the stretcher there, and they said, "Is there anything you want out of your pack?" You know what I wanted? The teeth that it took out of that skull.
Ah.
I didn't care about anything else. I just wanted those teeth.
Oh man. What did you keep those?
Oh, I had them for years.
Did you really?
And finally, when I started dealing with the PTSD. Let me back up just a minute.
Sure.
Hazel and I got married.
Mm-hmm.
She had a lot of emotional problems of her own that she was dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of helped each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got to how, I'm sure you've heard these stories over and over. She'd wake me up at night. I'd be beating the stuffings out of her. I'm back in combat.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd wake me up. I'd be screaming and having nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is very common combat veterans. You wake up, there's someone in the house.
Yeah.
You just know someone. I go through the house, the doors are all locked, lights are out, there's no one in the house. But I don't have that much problem with that anymore. But finally, I told her, I said, "Sweetheart, before I hurt you, I'm going to move into a different bedroom."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "When you hear me screaming at night, just don't come in." And we thought I was going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about PTSD. What really set me off, Joe, and I can't explain why, was 9/11. Then I started going on 41st for counseling. And they put me on medication trying to help me and everything. And I told the psychiatrist at that time, I said, a lot of these firemen and policemen that were at 9/11, I said, you watch, they're going to commit suicide, and because they can't handle it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, within months, they're committing suicide.
Yeah.
And then I kind of backed off, and I wasn't getting any better. So I started going to the Marines that I still meet with, the chosen few.
Mm-hmm.
I may have mentioned this to you the other day, but when I walked out, I told Hazel, I said, I've never been in a room with so many hearing aids and nobody can hear. And but then I went to over on 11th and 169 to the middle
Mm-hmm.
section,
Uh-huh.
and I can't think of the psychologist's name, Dr. Jeffries.
Uh-huh.
She shared the symptoms of PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
and we realized that's what's wrong with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, that's what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
I felt so much better just hearing her describe those symptoms, because that made me realize I'm not going crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not going crazy.
Yeah.
And then I went for 3 years for PTSD counseling.
Mm.
And like I mentioned earlier, the first counselor, he and I just had a real problem telling me to get over it.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, after several months with him, I told him, his name was Steve. I said, look, Steve, I said, you've really helped me. I didn't want to be rude to him.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I'm moving on.
Yeah.
Then I started going to the other unit at 11th and 169. And at first, it's a whole group. Then they break it down. I think there were 6 of us.
Mm-hmm.
Met in a room, sit around with the tables.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see those guys and how messed up they were. And I began to realize, man, I can get through this. I can work through this.
Yeah.
Because I was taught by my mom honey, you can do better than that.
Mhm.
I know you can do better than that. And I started getting over it, and like I say, I went for 3 years. And we didn't talk about combat, we didn't talk about killing, we didn't talk about all those different things like that. We talked about life. One of them was a farmer, and he talked about his cattle and
Mhm.
crops he was raising, such as that.
Mhm.
We had one black man that all he could talk about is why they always talk about the bad things in North Tulsa. Well, unfortunately, there's a lot coming out of there, but there's
Yeah.
bad stuff over here too.
Sure.
And there was 2 of them. They would sit with their back to the wall so nobody could get behind them. And I could see how I do this at church. I have to sit on the end. If I have to sit in the middle, I don't hear what the preacher's saying. I'm a nervous wreck that I'm cornered.
Mhm.
So I sit on the end.
Mhm.
But I went there for 3 years, and I felt like I was doing pretty good. And because of that, with the VA, working with the VA and listening to them, I've come to the point now where I'm a certified chaplain to
Mhm.
work with PTSD.
Mm.
So I feel I still have bad nights. I still, a lot of times watching the news or newspaper, I close my eyes, I can't watch it.
Mhm.
I realize that that's just part of it. So
Yeah.
I just see my way through it.
I see. Sounds like a good path, though, that's led you there. Did you keep a diary or a journal or anything like that when you were in the service?
No,
No. Do you remember where you were at when the Korean War ended? Were you still in the
38
hospital?
parallel.
You were on the 30th parallel when it ended?
Well, when the ceasefire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Actually, I don't believe that war's ever ended.
No, we're still in a ceasefire right now. So,
Yeah,
and they're still rattling sabers
exactly. Yeah.
even today.
Mhm.
So,
I'm just waiting for North Korea to do it again.
mhm. Yes, I absolutely, I think that's happening sooner than later.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, let me throw this in, Joe.
Sure.
I was working as a counselor in a local church here, and we were taking a break. You know, all these years I thought, man, Korea ruined my life. I've got all these hang-ups and everything and flashbacks and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
And the war's not over. We just wasted our time.
Mm-hmm.
And we were working as counselors in a church here, and we're sitting in a room with all these counselors coming out of Oral Roberts. And I just made a comment. I said, you know, I was with the Marines in Korea in 51. And I didn't realize it, but there was a young Korean man sitting across the room from me.
Mm-hmm.
And he came over and stood in front of me. And he says, may I? He said, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hmm.
Then I began to realize, because we went over there and kept the North Koreans out.
Mm-hmm.
South Korea's a free country, as free as they can be.
Absolutely.
That young man can come over here and get an education. Then I felt kind of proud of what we did.
Mm-hmm.
But up until then, no, it was a waste of time, waste of lives.
Yeah.
But no, they're coming over here, getting an education. Some of them stay, some of them go back. Now, next door is a Vietnamese family. And they're just really nice people. They never come out of the house. And they don't speak English. The one young man, his name is Sai. He's studying to be an architect. And he's the only one that speaks fluent English. They've been here 10, 15 years. And we can communicate with him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have a little vegetable garden. In the summertime, we'll take fresh vegetables over to him. And then maybe a day or two later, there's a knock on the door. Open the door. Here's this little Vietnamese woman with a plate full of egg rolls. Right out of the walk.
Wow. Wow.
But they don't come out of the house, they just stay there.
Hmm.
And they'll wave to you once in a while, but
Sure. Wow. Did you, when you got back after you were out of the hospital and you'd been released from the Marines, did you go back to school, or did you go to school on the GI Bill, or did you go to work right away, or?
I had that attitude that I'm just going to get started in the printing business. I'll just work my way up.
Uh-huh.
And back then, I think minimum wage was like $1, $1.25 an hour. I was working for 80 cents an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working up a sweat at the oil and gas journal. And I got to thinking, this isn't very smart.
Mm-hmm.
The government will pay for my education. I can go to Okmulgee and get an education, come out, and
Mm-hmm.
go to work that way,
Sure.
which I did. And I really enjoyed going to school over there.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I started doing a lot of dating.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, Joe, I was very insecure. I didn't think I was nice looking or anything.
Yeah.
Then I have a veteran saw my picture in the hallway there when I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Man, you're really a cutie." I said, "I didn't know it." And, but anyway, when I was over in Okmulgee,
Uh-huh.
I had this girl. She wasn't a girlfriend. She just, I don't know where I met her. Tall, red hair, freckle face, skinny, ugly.
Mm-hmm.
She had a list of girls that wanted to go with this Marine.
Mm.
And if I wanted a date, I don't remember her name. All I had to do is call her.
Mm.
And, hey, can you set me up for a date tonight? And she did. One girl over there, her name was Jody Henderson. She's a football queen.
Mm-hmm.
Cute personality like you wouldn't believe.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to go on together. Brought her to Tulsa, introduced her to my family, and we went together all summer long.
Yeah.
And like I say, all that time we were together, I think we kissed one time. I don't remember ever holding her hand, but she was a real winner, just as sweet as she could be. Personality like you wouldn't believe. And my mom said right in front of her, said, "Well, I picked up one of my daughter-in-laws."
Huh.
I took her home one weekend. I said, "Jody, I don't want to go with you anymore." I don't know why, but I just couldn't finalize a good relationship. So I broke up. My buddies and my family they were so upset with me. But see I can't trust her.
Yeah.
It's in my subconscious.
Yeah.
And I heard later that she got married, had 5 children, and her husband beat her to death.
Oh, Lord.
And
Oh.
she was such a sweetheart, though. But I didn't feel guilt or anything. I said, well, it's really sad. But I did think, what if I had married her?
Mm-hmm.
We could have had a good marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I just couldn't finalize a relationship. So,
Mm. I know you kind of touched on this before. Do you believe a lot of that did come from just the training, as far as, I guess, desensitizing yourself, or having to desensitize yourself to everything around you?
yeah. Like I said, I respected authority and I did what I was told.
Mm-hmm.
And if they said don't get in a close relationship, don't trust people. And even to this day, there's a lot of times when I'll meet someone and I think, for some reason, I don't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been burned many times.
Mm-hmm.
But, no, and I'm pretty well over it now.
Yeah.
I used to meet someone and immediately I judged them.
Mm-hmm.
I like you or I don't like you.
Wow.
But not anymore. I'll meet someone, I don't care how messed up they are or where they're coming from.
Sure.
I get acquainted with them.
Sure.
And I meet a person that's angry or fear or depression or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
My first thought is, why are they that way?
Mm-hmm.
Then I get to know them, and working as a counselor, eventually it comes up why they were abused as a child, or this or that happened.
Mm-hmm.
You can use, and then I find out, hey, that guy's all right.
Yeah.
He just has some issues he needs to deal with.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. This is usually a tough question. I ask this from time to time. Are there any in a war? There are examples of both. Really good examples of good humanity and the worst of humanity. Is there anything that kind of comes to mind that we haven't talked about as far as the either the best of humanity or the worst of humanity that you had witnessed?
I remember Second War. Of course, I was just a little kid, but we were taught in America that the Japanese people were like animals. They're not even human. But when the Marines went over there and started dealing with the Japanese people, they found out, hey, they're just like we are. Their eyes are a little different, their skin is a little different color, but they're human beings just like we are. And I remember there in Korea, we'd take a prisoner, and I'd realize, the guy's got a family. Has a mom and dad. He's human just like I am. He's just simply obeying orders.
Yeah.
And then I see how some of the other Marines would mistreat him and everything, treat him like an animal, but they're not. They're a human being. And I tried to show respect for him. Of course, I've got my guard up, but I try and be as nice as I can. There were times that we'd take prisoners. It happened more than once. And I've even talked to Second World War vets, said the same thing. They were taught that they were animals and such as that. And we'd taken a prisoner, if they were wounded or something, would medicate them, take care of them and everything, give them cigarettes and food and everything. Next thing you know, they're willing to fight for us. Why? Because we just showed them love and affection.
Yeah.
And they're taught the same thing. They were crazy people. Kill them. So, no, it bothered me because I don't care who it is. Some man my wife and I, we've worked a lot with the veterans on the street because they just can't fit back into society. When we were in Northern California, a lot of the Vietnam vets were actually living back in the mountains. Dungarees, fatigues, they're still in combat. They can't get over it. Their life has been ruined.
Yeah.
We go downtown and some of them are very intelligent people. There's one veteran down there that his dad was a district judge, highly educated man. And his son, living back there in North Tulsa, up in the bushes and everything, very, very intellectual. But he just can't fit back into society. And I was talking to him one time, and he was just starting to talk about things that happened in Vietnam, the first time he shot someone. And I just flashed back on him. He was just beginning to open up. Then my wife walks in, of course he clammed right back up. But there's some good men back there, but war just ruined them.
Yeah. I know you have the opportunity to talk to a lot of these guys, a lot of veterans. If you had a wider audience to talk to, or even someone that will read this or see this later on that's a veteran, what would you say to them regarding your experience and them and being able to move forward with your life after serving in a combat zone?
We came back from Korea. It wasn't just the Marines. Any serviceman coming back from Korea was not respected. We were looked down on. And I guess it was towards the end of Vietnam and we get into Iraq and all that. Then all of a sudden our country starts respecting the military. And I was never respected or anything, or says, we're proud of you and thank you for your service, until we get into Iraq and all that sort of stuff. Now, if I wear a Marine Corps hat or a Purple Heart hat, people come up to me and say, we appreciate your service. You know what I told them? It was an honor. And Joe, it was. it's an honor. We're still free today because all through the history of this country, we have fought for our freedom. And that old saying, freedom's not free. There's a lot of people buried overseas, thousands of servicemen. They never came home, but they gave their life so we could be free. So I know I tell people it's an honor. It was an honor to serve in the Marine Corps, and I'm proud of it now. Well, you see this decal on the front door, big Marine sign. I'm proud of it. I'm extremely proud of being a Marine. So, and you know, they're talking about how tough the Marines are. I've talked to soldiers that went through worse than some Marines did, a lot worse than what I went through. So, anyone that's serving our country and fighting for our country, I respect them and I honor them.
What's your best advice for these guys that are coming back and feel disconnected?
Deal with it. Now, everyone talks about how terrible the VA is. Not to me. You know why? And I tell young boys going to the VA, watch your attitude. I took one veteran in from Vietnam. When he was in the military, he fell in the shower and cut his hand. And I told him, I said, Ron, watch your attitude when you go in. I'm going to get 100%. He goes in there with a cocky attitude, foul mouth and everything. They gave him some pain pills and made him pay for them. I go in. I know my doctor by name, Dr. Nightingale. He's been my doctor for years and years. And my wife and I worked at the point we're both retired, so we do some traveling. I go in to see him for my annual. He says, well, where you been this time? And the nurses, we know each other by name. And Barbara, my nurse, she gives me a big hug and everything. And, how you doing? How's your wife and everything? So, no, watch your attitude when you go in there. But don't do like I did. Put it off for 40 years. Because I became a workaholic. That's how I dealt with it. As long as I was busy, my mind was occupied and busy, I didn't have to deal with it. But the older I got and got towards retirement, then it starts coming back. And like I say, 9/11 really topped it off. But no, I tell these young people, I'm dealing with one yesterday from Iraq. Deal with it. Don't do like I did. Don't put it aside. I said, let's deal with it right now.
Talk it out, basically. Talk.
Oh yeah, talk about it. And I sat with him 4 hours yesterday. He's not ready to talk. But you know what, like I said, I'm very patient. I can sit and listen to him talk about cars and family and having a good father and all that. I can listen to it.
Sure.
Someday it's going to come to the surface. He's going to run out of things to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's why my wife and I both are certified counselors, chaplains to work with these people. I'm very patient.
I think that's wonderful. I
And
really do.
he still says, no, I don't want to deal with it. And Hazel told him, says, look, I'll go to the VA with you to the counselor. Okay. He just wants someone to help him.
Sure.
So-
Well, all of us at some point in time need a hand up, or just a little bit, just a little guidance will get us there.
Yeah, he has the nightmares and the sweats, and he's got some real bad mental problems, and separated from his family and everything. And he says he's doing okay. And I told him, I said, you're not doing okay. How come you have nightmares? How come you're separated from your family?
Yeah.
Well, it's not as bad as it used to. I told him, I said, look, the older you get, the worse it's going to get, unless you deal with it.
Yes.
So we're going to go to Branson Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday, we're taking him to the VA to talk to a counselor, get him started.
Outstanding. That's outstanding. I just have a couple more questions. Did you, were you ever a member of like the VFW or the American Legion or anything like that when you came back or later on?
The DAV was the first one.
Uh-huh.
Disabled vets, I'm involved with them. I'm involved with the Marines, the Chosen Few. I'm a member of Military Order of Purple Hearts. The VFW, I've not really involved with them, but I've involved several groups that help me.
Mm-hmm.
And because we can sit down and we can, once in a great while, well, like Saturday when you were there,
Mm-hmm.
they started talking about it, it starts coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So just being with those guys, I feel so much better. I'm not alone.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Gene, is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't covered so far in our talk today?
well, you may want to erase this, but like I told you, Joe, I appreciate you, that you'll take the time to talk to veterans that need help. And then the fact, I may never see it, but this will go on to reach children, generations to come.
Yeah.
And because of you, they're going to know about the Second War, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan. They're going to know.
Well, it's an honor. It's an honor for me to be able to do this. It truly is. And I want to thank you for your time to sitting with me today and talking about your experiences.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you.